So, good morning. Welcome to today's edition of College Coffee Talk. Today, I will be talking briefly, yet laden with value, I hope, about the supplemental essays, right? There's two types of college essays, broadly speaking. There's the personal statement, which I covered in a previous installment of College Coffee Talk, which you can either see on our Facebook page or you could listen to the audio version on our podcast, College Admissions Edge. The personal statement is pretty much the equivalent of an interview. Most colleges don't do interviews anymore because admissions officers were frankly inundated with applications brought upon by themselves, by the college marketing departments, I should say, thanks to the Common Application, thanks to the rise of test optional policies, and particularly thanks to the relentless marketing that these colleges do. You know, once you sign up for the PSAT or really anything related to college, but once you give your name and email address to the College Board, apparently they will sell your name off to interested parties roughly 18 times between 10th and 11th grade throughout the senior year of high school. Apparently, that's a study I read a few years ago. So if you're wondering why you get all these crazy emails and texts and brochures that all look the same, you know, every kid from every possible race and ethnicity wearing shorts, frolicking or walking with backpacks in the quad, even if the school is in upper Minnesota, they're out there in summer garb, such false advertising. Nobody has acne, which implies that if you go to those colleges, you won't get a zit. So anyway, that's the marketing aspect of it, and that's why there aren't any more personal interviews for the most part. Now, if you apply to an Ivy League school, I was just talking to someone the other day who attended a workshop that I was holding in my office, and she said, "Yeah, when my daughter applied to, I can't remember which Ivy it was, and MIT, she was the first one out of all of her friends to get interviews." And I said, "Okay, how'd she do?" Well, she didn't get in there. So number one, it's not a race. Number two, everyone who applies to an Ivy League will get an interview administered by an alum. The alums are tasked with interviewing. I mean, they sign up, but then they're tasked with interviewing college applicants. The thing is that those interviews don't count for anything. They do write up a report, send them to the admissions committee. I imagine if there was some really bad red flag, that might go into the weighting of that decision about that applicant. But for the most part, those interviews are not designed to help the applicants. They are designed to keep the alums in the fold. Keeping them active, contributors financially, promoting the college to other people. That's how colleges self-perpetuate. They induct you into the cult. You become one of the many alumni, and hopefully a fraction of them continue to promote the college, both emotionally and financially. So anyway, that's the deal with the personal statement. It's a substitute for those admissions interviews. Again, broadly speaking. Now the supplemental essays, a whole different ballgame. The purpose of the supplemental essays can vary, but I think the main part is to convince the college that you are genuinely interested in attending, that you've done your research, your due diligence, you've thought about why this college is a good match, and you can express it in paper if they ask on paper if they ask you, which most colleges do, if they ask supplemental essays. Not every college has supplemental essays, by the way. Like Northeastern University does not ask you to write a supplemental essay, at least for previous years they haven't, which is possibly a leading contributor to why they get more than 100,000 applications every year. So many admissions officers, though, will actually weight the supplemental essays more heavily than the personal statement because they're really designed to demonstrate your interest. So colleges have, just to give you like the background here, colleges have kind of a big problem thanks to the situation that they have contributed to, which is a huge influx of college applications, larger, greater and greater every year. This past year for 2025 grads saw, I believe, the largest amount of applications submitted ever, which also had to do with the fact that 3.9 million kids graduated high school this year, or are graduating high school this year, which is the largest in history. It's going to start slipping down in 2026 and beyond. But all these factors sort of had this confluence of things that occurred to make it harder on the colleges to figure out whether, if they admit someone, they're going to actually show up. And they track that ratio. That's like the golden ratio. It's called the yield, the amount of people who apply and get, the amount of people who they admit versus the ones who actually say yes back to the school and matriculate. So if that yield is higher, then that looks better for the school for a whole bunch of reasons, including financially. If it is not such a good yield, then that hurts the college in many ways and indirectly rank. Okay, so I see, see some comments coming in. Unfortunately, I don't know Spanish, so I can't answer Elvis's. Something about 11. So sorry. I welcome your comments, but I would say put them in English. So sorry, Elby. So one of those questions, why are you applying here, is designed to help these colleges ferret out whether you actually are interested, because that is one way that you can influence your ability to get in. That's a factor that gets tracked. Good morning to Brene. How are you? Good to see you. So there's other ways, of course, to demonstrate interest, but you want to do that particularly for the colleges that are not your top choice school. So I'm not saying fake it. Don't need to get into a Harry Met Sally type of thing with college applications, but the schools that are the most quote unquote sensitive, not that schools are people, but the people, behind the schools, the colleges that are the most sensitive are typically the ones that feel like they're being used as a safety school, as their best educated guess. So Tulane University, notorious for protecting their yield, for not admitting kids who are superior in terms of grades and scores, with the sort of tacit understanding that that kid will never choose Tulane as a top choice if they are Ivy caliber type colleges. So if you are significantly above or a little bit above the median SAT and ACT score of a particular college, I would argue it's more important for you to demonstrate interest to that college as opposed to the ones that are at the top of your range, the more aspirational ones. So the why supplemental essay is certainly a great way to do that, but there's other ways you should do, other things you should do as well. Visiting if you can, showing up on their online chats, if you can, registering for those webinars, following them on social, reaching out to your local admissions officer, or the admissions officer who's charged with your location in terms of the regional area that they recruit from. So there's a bunch of other ways to do this, but the supplemental essay is your last best chance, I would say, that you can do to demonstrate that you've actually seriously considered that school and why it's a good fit, and be persuasive and convincing that they should give you one of their spots. So how do you do that? Well, let me talk to you about how you don't do that. What you don't do is answer at a very high level and be very generic. That's where kids fall down. What you should do is give specific reasons, and you need to go through their website and come up with substantive, I should say, reasons, not just the campus is beautiful and I love the planetarium. You need to talk about actual substantive reasons why that college is a good fit. So if I were applying to college today, I would be looking at the specific courses, specific professors, specific majors, programs, you name it, and I would be listing specific, not some high-level generic type of response. And that's that second response, the generic one. That's what most kids do. It seems like to me, most kids start off with very, I wouldn't say superficial, but it looks like they phoned in those responses frequently. And so my tip to you, if you're watching and listening, is that after you've written a supplemental essay, after your child has written a supplemental essay, read it back, read every line, and ask specifically, does this pertain only to this college, or can it be applicable to every college in America or many colleges in America? So you want to stay away from the ones that can pertain to more than one college, and you want to be very, very specific. All right, so that's one essay, one supplemental essay. And remember, not every college asks supplemental essays, but the more competitive ones do. Again, I think it's because of this concept of protecting the yield. Another essay which has become a lot more prevalent since the Supreme Court decision declaring affirmative action to be unconstitutional in college admissions is the diversity or the community essay. Describe what community you come from, how has it influenced you, etc. Colleges are using this to, some people say it's an end around the Supreme Court decision about affirmative action, but in his majority opinion, Chief Justice Roberts actually said almost verbatim that nothing is to say that colleges can't ask students about their backgrounds and essays and how they influence them. So some colleges actually cut and pasted part of Chief Justice Roberts' opinion and stuck it in there and ask applicants to respond to that. In fact, since that decision came down, the diversity results have been mixed. Some schools report a decrease in diversity, and some actually reported an increase in diversity. So very interesting. And what that means for the purpose of today's little chat is that it's not going away. These diversity essays are not going away. So if you do have some sort of visual diversity, you should absolutely embrace that and talk about how that has influenced you or informed some of how you live or affected you somehow compared to maybe people who are not visually diverse. What if you're not visually diverse? I mean, I have both types of clients. I have diverse clients and I have non-diverse clients. And I spend a lot of time last year talking to kids about their diversity that they don't really have in one sense. Like, how is a blonde, blue-eyed, white kid from suburban Long Island going to write a diversity essay? Well, there's a couple ways to do that. One is you go further, further back in the family tree to talk about how great-grandpa came over to escape the potato famine with 3 cents in his pocket and built an amazing business. And I do have several clients like that, which is really kind of cool. People who did come over from Ireland or from other countries with nothing and built a big business. But let's say that's not on the table either. There's different types of diversity that you can write about. It's not just visual diversity. There could be diversity of thought, diversity of opinion, diversity of other experiences. So usually those diversity essays are worded in such a way to imply that you should be writing about visual diversity, but there's other ways to go. They're open-ended enough to talk about other types of diversity. So I would give that a shot. That's the best way to do it. If you are a non-diverse person and you're struggling with that essay, think about other types of diversity. And the third type of supplemental essay that I will just briefly discuss, and then I'll sign off for today, is the goofy essay, like define X, or blah, 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 blah. We've bought a huge container of mustard at Costco also. Write an essay inspired by that. So, I think this might be Wake Forest. What is your top 10? And there's no explanation, no further explanation. So I believe that the only way to incorrectly answer those essays is by being boring. What the purpose of those essays is for you to demonstrate that you've got some personality, that you're kind of interesting, that you'd be fun to hang out with at 11 o'clock at night or 2 a.m. in the dorm, that type of thing. I had a client last year who responded to the top 10 by talking about the top 10 historical mustaches. Thought that was awesome. And she was like a very creative person, but a little shy, so that was even cooler. She allowed that aspect of her personality to come out. So whatever you do with that type of essay, don't be afraid to take a risk and avoid being boring. Now, I wouldn't go overboard. I wouldn't say my number one top 10 historical mustache is Adolf Hitler. No, don't do that. But you can certainly have fun with this and don't cross the line. That's what I would say. That, my friends, are my thoughts, my brief thoughts on the supplemental college essays. If you have a class of 2026 kid coming up and getting ready to write those essays, my best advice is to start them early, start them often, get them ready over the summer before school starts up again, and allow several drafts. Allow them to breathe in between drafts. A lot of the essay writing is done subconsciously, like when you're not actually writing. After you've exhausted yourself and you go out and take a walk, you take a nap, or you the next day you wake up in the morning and you come up with a new angle or a way to fix whatever issue's been bothering you on the essay. You got to allow plenty of time for this, which is why we are starting with our clients, our 2026 clients. We've already started talking to them and getting drafts out of them about the personal essay. And then once we're done with that, we'll start tackling the supplemental essays. For the most part, they come out August 1st, but some colleges will drip them out earlier. That's it for today's episode of College Coffee Talk. We will not be back next Monday because we will be away. We're actually taking a vacation before we get really busy next year. So June 23rd, we are gone. We will be in an undisclosed location in New England. But we will be back in July. So have a great couple of weeks. Good luck with the essays. Good luck with the whole college process. And I'll talk to you soon. Thanks for watching and listening. Bye-bye.